I'm an Apple critic, but they don't spend money on big M&A. I'm showing here on the screen the capital expenditures for Apple. It's $11 billion projected for this year. Last year was 8 billion, 10 before that, 10 before that, on a market cap of nearly $3 trillion. This is far less than the capex of Meta, of Microsoft, and even maybe a company like CoreWeave is probably got more capex than this. Apple abandoned their Apple Car project, which is not
At least 10 billion in investments. We'll never know.
and that would have been the growth driver for Apple. And it's bad news that they abandoned that. Look, I'm sure they did it probably because of execution reasons. Something must have gone wrong there, but
Lots of reasons, yeah.
That could have breathed life into their future revenue. They don't have that. So I don't think they'll do the OpenAI acquisition. It's interesting speculation, but it would be a complete about face in terms of how they do capital allocation. There's a reason why Warren Buffett invested in Apple. One of the reasons was because they're so good at capital allocation, but they lost the Apple and innovation. And I think Steve Jobs will be rolling in his grave, and they've become an iteration company. Now they're going from iOS model 18. No one remembers iOS 14. What's the difference?
I agree with all of that. That's why I say that almost tongue in cheek about the Apple OpenAI thing. But here's the counter element to it. Look, Steve Jobs handpicked Johnny Ive, and Johnny Ive is Johnny Ive. But at the same time, Steve Jobs also handpicked Tim Cook in 97 from Compaq, he was head of supply chain for Compaq, which at the time was one of the biggest PC companies on the planet. And Tim Cook made Apple into the most successful investment, as you pointed out, for Warren Buffett in anything Warren Buffett has done. Okay, which is this extraordinary efficiency of manufacturing made China. Things wouldn't have been possible without what Apple's done. Tim Cook basically has hired 33 million people from China to build all the iPhones in our pockets around the world. But we don't have 33 million people in the US to build iPhones going forward. So my point is, you're totally right, very conservative on this. The only reason I bring up this crazy idea is that Johnny Ive is of Apple DNA. He's very close to Laurene Jobs. Laurene that was Steve Jobs' wife, one of the wealthiest people on the planet. Emerson Collective is our entity. And that was an investor in Johnny Ive's company. So now she's a big investor in OpenAI. And so the point is there's shared DNA of the company. So Apple normally has never done big acquisitions. I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying if at some point they still find themselves at odds on an AI strategy and they need devices, etc., it's not an unthinkable idea, especially given the commonality. And the only time Apple has done an acquisition from the outside and given that outsider total access to their core systems is literally with Steve Jobs, because Next became the underpinning of the software that still runs in today's Macs.